have filed suit against the town of Milton because they failed to comply with the MBTA Communities Law about creating zoning for more multiple family housing. So what's the
Right.
story?
So, I mean, obviously, I think folks have been following the issue and the recent referendum and election in Milton, where voters came out and voted against the town complying with the MBTA Communities Law. So I will say, one, I think it's crystal clear to everyone, including folks in Milton, that we are in a housing crisis, and that doesn't just affect someone's ability to have shelter and to be safe. It affects our economy, our workforce. Housing is one critical tool to build wealth. It allows us to close the racial wealth gap. You name it, it is significant. And we've said from the beginning we're going to focus on it because we understand affordability is a major issue. The MBTA Communities Law, which I have to remind folks, is a reasonable piece of legislation. It was signed by Governor Baker, who worked with the Democratic legislature to get it done as one significant tool to address this housing crisis. And when I got into office, immediately put out an advisory making it crystal clear to all the municipalities that have the T as a public transit, that this was a mandatory law. And then every step of the way have been working with the governor and the administration to offer technical assistance and advice. So then we get to a place where Milton, which is a rapid transit community and defined themselves as such last year and again at the beginning of the year, or I should say in 2022 and at the beginning of last year, has decided not to comply with this law. So we're simply keeping our word of suing the town, seeking a court order for the court to say not only is the law mandatory, but that they absolutely have to comply with the law and continuing to be reasonable every step of the way.
A couple of questions about the suit against Milton and what Milton did. And by the way, our number is 877-301-8970 if you want to call or text the Attorney General herself. I know this is a stupid question, and I'm worried I'm going to be embarrassed when you answer it, but I'm going to plow ahead anyway. We talked about Milton almost every day for days here, and in the middle of one of the conversations, I said, I forget, a yes person had just called in and said, well, if you're voting no in my hometown of Milton, that person's hometown, you're voting to violate the law. And so the question is, why does a community have a right to vote to violate the law? They couldn't vote to say breaking into somebody's home in Milton is legal. So why is there even a vote to begin with if the only legal option is a yes? Is it a stupid question?
It's not a stupid question.
Thank
it's
you.
actually a question.
Thank you. I appreciate your
It's
generosity of spirit. Go ahead.
It's also a question that the team contemplated, but we felt we want to focus on the issue at hand. The ballot happened, the referendum happened. We will continue to explore whether or not we go in that direction in terms of it being valid or not. But it is what it is. I think what we want to make crystal clear, not only to Milton, but to any other municipality that is contemplating doing this.
There are 130 left to vote, roughly, right?
That's
This
several,
year.
right.
Okay, yeah.
So that any town that is contemplating following Milton's direction, not to do that, and frankly, to get the court to immediately not only make a decision that agrees with us, that this law is mandatory, it is not voluntary. And the second piece that's really important is them ordering Milton to comply. And we think that this reasonable step that we're taking will then, of course, encourage and incentivize every other municipality to proceed as they already are in coming into compliance with the MBTA.
Do you have any
law.
question that it's mandatory? Obviously, you don't.
There's
You
no
wouldn't have-
doubt.
So then, since you said my question was not stupid, why don't you just put out a letter to the 130 communities that Rentham's voting tonight, and another 100 and whatever, 10 dozen or so? You don't have a choice. So this law is in effect in your community now. No vote is necessary, unless I'm missing something.
Well, we're continuing to make that clear, and we could have focused our energy on going back and forth on whether or not the referendum itself was a legal action they took. Instead, we're focused on the law itself and the enforcement of it, and we're confident that if, in our arguments, but if the court agrees with us and gives us this reasonable remedy, that Milton will ultimately come into compliance, and every other municipality will not do what Milton did.
And what happens when they don't come into compliance?
So there are other steps that we can take. Even in our complaint, we were very limited, I should say, or limited sort of the remedies we were seeking at this stage. But if, for example, the court says not only is this law mandatory, but also, Milton, you have to come into compliance immediately, we also can sort of push Milton, and if they don't, we can go back to that same court and seek other remedies, forcing maybe permits to be issued, someone to be appointed to oversee this process. There's a lot that we can do, but again, every step of the way, we have been reasonable, we have been fair. And I want to add one point on this. This law is not only significant, it is really essential to addressing this housing crisis. And that's why Governor Baker worked with Democrats to get it done. The other piece is, as Secretary Augustus, who's our new housing secretary, and his team worked to propose regulations. They met and communicated with towns. We did the same. So any town that said, well, the law is difficult for us to come into compliance with because, for example, location. We don't have space to develop housing of this type. The agency went back to the drawing board, revised the regulations to afford that municipality the flexibility they would need to be able to come into compliance. So every step of the way, you have an agency in our office offering that technical assistance, listening and being responsive and being extremely reasonable. And in this case, you have a small subset of residents who are driving this opposition. And frankly, we hope that not only we continue to stay in touch with the yes folks, but we get folks on the no side to shift their perspective, and also those who didn't even participate in the election to pay attention and understand how important this issue is.
That's the Attorney General, Andrea Joy Campbell. She's here for the hour. We'll get to your questions in just a minute.
Just one more thing before we get to those questions. You know, we have a big mess with Stewart Healthcare. They serve a lot of people who are a low income, a lot of Medicaids and stuff. They may be going broke here. The Attorney General, Healy, when she was Attorney General, wrote a report saying that they were in financial trouble, but nothing was really done about this. And now they're not showing the Governor Healy now, all that she needs about their money. There's the disclosures that she asked them for. So I'm wondering, is there any role for you at this stage of the game with Stewart Healthcare?
There's a significant role the AG's office plays, and I along with the team, and we're following this issue closely, as you can imagine. It's a devastating issue. The state of affairs with Stewart is sad, depressing, and frankly, just in many ways unacceptable. So we're sort of doing a couple of things. One is in the immediate, working with HHS, the governor, the administration, in problem-solving mode. How do we ensure that folks are continuing to access their health care? How do we ensure that the providers, the doctors and nurses providing that health care are getting paid? How do we make sure that we're keeping these institutions afloat as best we can? That we have to do in communication with HHS and the administration. The second is the accountability piece for Stewart. We have some time for that. Our office plays a significant role there. I can't say a lot on what we can do and don't do because it is an active and ongoing matter. But I can tell the public, I am concerned about the lack of transparency, and we will continue to push them to produce documents, not only for the administration, but also for our purposes. And then the second is, on that accountability, we will absolutely hold them accountable, not only for anything that transpired to get us to this place by Stewart, but even looking forward. How do we make sure that this just doesn't happen again in Massachusetts? So more to come on that.
Governor Healy thinks that there may be something criminal here. Do you think so?
We're still actively exploring, and frankly, we need more information before we can make any assessment or proceed down any civil or criminal lane.
Well, can I ask one question about a criminal thing, if I may? What we do know, courtesy of Brian McGrory's columns, former editor of the Globe, is 2 jets were purchased by the company. They're allegedly selling them now for tens of millions of dollars. At the same time, thanks to Globe reporting, we found out that at least one woman died because an item that could, a piece of equipment that could have saved her life was repossessed. Is that not at least borderline criminal when you're enriching yourself at the same time that you're putting the lives of your clients, your patients at risk?
So I'll say a couple of things. I cannot say much there. I want to say that we will absolutely hold anyone responsible for the current state of affairs accountable. We are first focused on making sure that I can't stress enough, ensuring that people not only continue to have access to health care, but if folks along the way, and I've read that horrific story too, feel as though their health care is being jeopardized, the Department of Public Health, reach out to them. They have monitors monitoring this situation. We are in close communication with them. That is the number one priority. People need access to health care, affordable care, and providers need to be paid. The second is we're reviewing everything, and we are actively seeking information from Stewart, lenders, anyone who is involved in this crisis, gathering all of that information, and as you know, that takes time. We will review that, and we will proceed as quickly as we can with any level of accountability, but we need time for that, and we have time for that, and I want folks to know we take that very seriously, and that we will come back to the public after that assessment, after that review, and let them know how we're going to proceed on the accountability front. It's similar to Milton. We had to do our job internally. We put the complaint out publicly today, and so now I can say more than I could say a week ago. We'll do the same when it comes to Stewart.
You know, just one last thing on Stewart. You know, Brian McGrory did great reporting about the company planes, and then, of course, the private yachts owned by the guy that runs the place, Dilatore. But he got the flight document shows that these planes owned by the company were going to places like St. Kitts and the French Riviera and places like that. Do you think they were going there to get medical equipment, or do you think they might have been going on vacation?
Who knows? But, you know, the public is not stupid, so I'll let the public make
What
their
was your
own,
reaction to
own
those
assessment.
stories as a
all these
citizen?
all these stories are horrific.
Okay.
The story about the woman who died after
39 years old,
childbirth,
yeah.
as a mother of 2 young kids, you hold your baby, and what the husband and family went through is absolutely, I mean, I shed tears. It was painful to read. So we know that this crisis didn't happen by accident. The question is, how did we get here, and how do we hold folks accountable under our existing laws? And we will do that. And I want the public to know that. I obviously inherited this situation, so we are in the weeds. I'm more in the weeds on this because I inherited it. And, you know, looking back and looking forward, we will do what's necessary.
You know, the person you inherited from is going to be here at noon if you need to talk
Yes,
to her.
I was with the governor last night. We were tag teaming everything related to getting Biden reelected, and Harris as well. So we stay in communication and trying to solve these issues.
Very quick Stewart things, then we will get to the calls. Do you agree with the governor that they should stop doing business, they should get out of Massachusetts?
We'll follow their lead. I will say Health and Human Services, DPH, the governor, they're the ones who lead our response in terms of what we're going to do with the current institutions. We play a role once there are other things at play, maybe a transaction or something else, so we're not there yet. So we're going to continue to work with HHS and make sure folks have access to health care.
Last question, would it be legal, could the state bar for-profit hospitals in general from doing business in Massachusetts?
Well, I will say what's definitely on the longer list of the accountability conversation and how we don't get back to this place going forward is looking at the role that private equity plays in the delivery of healthcare system, not just for a Stewart. We have our Medicaid fraud unit that is actively also looking into this based on what they're seeing in terms of the quality of care. So this is sort of a more long-term policy issue, also on the list for us to explore and discuss further.
Rick in the truck, you're first with the Attorney General, Andrea Joy Campbell. Welcome.
Rick in the truck?
In the truck. That's
Hello,
correct.
Rick.
Hey, Rick.
Yes, I am out. Thank you for taking my call. So, Mr. Attorney General, my question is, my wife and I are going through IVF treatment right now. And I heard Jim and Marjorie talking last week about the Alabama case, and one of them mentioned that IVF is covered by insurance in Massachusetts. Unfortunately, the first attempt failed, and we are going at it again, but insurance hasn't paid anything. I don't know if there's criteria. We are at Mass General. And I tried to look it up online, and all I got was an ice cream headache. So I didn't know, ma'am, if you have any thoughts, or is it like if you're too old, is there any criteria I'm missing?
So, Rick, because it's a personal nature, first of all, thank you for calling in and highlighting a critical issue and being vulnerable in sharing. I'm going to ask you to stay on with Lauren from my team, Lauren Zoe from my team, to make sure that we can get your contact and information and also follow up with you on specifics related to what you and your wife are going through. But one thing I do want to say is we're obviously following what is happening in Alabama. It is outrageous. It is egregious. We have some of the most progressive laws when it comes to reproductive health care, including IVF, and we fully support it. We support couples who want to have children through this process. And we, of course, will continue to enforce our laws. But I think it's a reminder to everyone that this conversation just isn't about access to abortion. It is about maternal health, IVF, ways in which anyone choose how and when they choose to parent. And these right-wing leftists, and in this case, the judiciary, have one clear mission, which is to, at the end of the day, declare fetuses as people, which is going to stand in the way of us affording folks the reproductive justice they care about. So we are working actively on these issues nationally. And then here in Massachusetts, we want to support Rick and others. So please don't hesitate to reach out to our office.
I thought, though, that was
Excuse
the
me
law
one
of the
second. I
land.
don't want Rick to hang up. Just
Yeah.
make sure, Rick, we're going to put you on hold and get your information and
Yes.
pass it along.
Thank you,
Because
Rick.
I
I'm sorry,
thought that
Marjorie.
that was state law that insurance companies had to cover IVF treatment in Massachusetts. So it's odd that his insurance company's not doing that.
Well, I don't know who his insurance company is.
Yeah.
I don't know the details, but one thing we do well when people call in here is we follow up and look at their individual case and then navigate that through our consumer specialists and other team members as well.
Here's a text from, she doesn't sign it, but I was laid off at the end of January, applied for unemployment benefits. It's been impossible to reach a person over the phone to answer a question about why my claim was denied. The recording says to call back later in the week when demand is typically lower, then the line disconnects. This is emotionally crushing, very distressing, as I've been unemployed for a month now with no benefits, a mortgage, student loan payments, a 9-year-old son. My salary was $90,000. Why is it so difficult to speak with someone in mass unemployment?
Okay. Did that person give their name?
No, but I've got the phone number.
If can they actually? Can we take down their phone number?
Yep.
And if they want to share their name with you, we can then get it to our team. We'll follow up. We can navigate that state agency. But the person also mentioned student loan debt, which we are at the forefront of that work. That is directly within our wheelhouse to help folks do away with their student loan debt. And really proud of our team. We just put up some ads on the T and other places to get folks to know that we are the student loan ombudsman for the state. And we are helping folks, folks are calling in and saying, thank you for helping me wipe out $120,000 of student loan debt. I met a woman whose student loan debt was over $400,000. So we are actively working on that. And so I mention it because we might be able to be helpful to this constituent. But to others who are listening, if you're carrying student loan debt, and especially if you work in public service, you're a teacher, government employee, you are probably eligible for some significant relief. So I encourage folks to also reach out to our office as well. And check out our website on that.
We have Daryl at the Boston Public Library. Mike, he lives in Milton. He wants to talk to the Attorney General. Here
Hey,
he comes.
Daryl, welcome.
Hi, Daryl.
Daryl. Hi, Daryl.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I love living in this Commonwealth, in this state, and a lot of it is because of who we have running it, and I really appreciate it. I live in Milton. My wife and I were yes votes.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for putting out, doing a law. And I don't understand. I'm not part of the governing body. I couldn't really do that. I don't have the temperament. But I just don't understand how we can fight. And personally, I know this isn't a very big question, but I don't want my tax dollars. I'd rather have them going to all these other programs that I truly believe in. Mm-hmm. I don't want them going to fighting the Commonwealth. Mm-hmm. How do we yes voters say no thank you? You people that voted no, well then you guys fund the fight. Mm-hmm. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Daryl, and your wife. And I have to give Tom Callahan and others who organized the Yes Coalition a lot of great work, and people were deeply disappointed. And of course, it creates division in a community. So a few things. One, many of the folks making these decisions at the local level are elected. And there are folks we remain in communication with who are working really hard to bring the town into compliance and to make sure that Milton is delivering housing that is reasonable and affordable for folks, as is every other municipality, especially because they have public transit as a good. And they border Quincy and Boston that are also coming into compliance. And the sad part is you have a small subset sort of driving a narrative in a community. And I think there's an opportunity to push back on that narrative when you talk about who is this housing for. It's for seniors, elders who can't afford to live here. It's for young couples who want to start a family. It's for public employees. That's what we're talking about. And so I think it's one, pushing back on a narrative. The other piece that I think is really important is the town doing an evaluation. It's not just legal cost. The governor has already said that they're going to follow through with them not receiving certain public funds. We've made that crystal clear along the way, what was at risk here and what the threat was. So we hope that Milton will take a different direction post this lawsuit and not continue to waste time, frankly, but to come into compliance. And I'll just add, over the last year, the government, the state agency gave them, housing state agency gave them resources for in various grants to allow them to bring in someone to help them navigate this process, to develop a plan, to offer technical assistance. And they developed that along the way, primarily the select board. And they developed that along the way.
Well, they voted for it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they had resources from the state to develop a plan. So there is a plan there. It's just a small group of folks who are looking for, I think, NIMBYism and maybe other reasons. I'm not entirely sure. that they don't want certain housing in their community.
With all due respect, it was not, I mean, you keep saying a small group of people. It was a huge no vote in Milton. I mean, thousands and thousands of people voted against this thing, correct?
Thousands, but even then, not the entire town, the
Oh, of
turnout,
course not,
right?
right.
And there was a large side on the yes side. So yes, there are people who
Yeah.
voted. But at the end of the day, when people go out and vote on something and are giving information, you still need folks to lead something and to be communicating.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not entirely sure what the no folks were saying to some people. I know what the yes folks were saying because they had more mailers and organizing.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what the narrative was to some no folks? I don't know. I do know NIMBYism plays a role in some of these conversations. And so we have an obligation, not necessarily to dwell on the pros and cons of each side, but as a chief law enforcement officer to enforce the law as it currently exists. And it's crystal clear, it's a mandatory obligation, and we're going to enforce it.
Quickly, do you have any indication from any of the 130 or whatever's left, any of them who are indicating they plan to follow Milton's lead or no?
No.
Okay. You yesterday, I think it was yesterday, introduced a strategic plan for your office. You're nodding in agreement. I'm not quite sure what it is. Could you give us the highlights of
You didn't
what's
read
in?
my plan?
I did read it, but I was very tired. It was late at night, and I just can't remember every detail.
Really? Okay. Well, I will say, year one, I'm obviously in year two. I love my job, and I work with an incredible team of dedicated lawyers and staff. So in year one, we all put our heads down across all of our offices, not just Boston, but our Springfield office, our New Bedford office, and Worcester, to develop a strategic plan. We could focus on a whole host of things. So how do you narrow the focus? I'm proud of this plan. In it, we talk about the tools of the office. Folks will say, oh, what are your tools? They are significant. Of course, litigation, as demonstrated by the Milton lawsuit, but policy and government, showing up at the State House to take positions on major policy initiatives, including in the housing context, the criminal legal reform context, juvenile justice context. Our grant-making tool, significant. We have millions of dollars where we can design grants and put them into community. We did that with, for example, our maternal health grant, $1.5 million we put out there to community-based organizations to continue to close those gaps. We did one in the migrant crisis to support legal aid organizations on the ground that are doing remarkable work but needed greater funding. That's a significant tool. And then the last is our community engagement and outreach and training tool. So we want folks to be aware that all those tools exist in our office, and we're going to maximize them fully and treat them all with all the same, in the sense that the litigation tool won't overrule the others. But then we also said, what are the issues we're going to focus on? Number one was absolutely everything having to do with affordability and economics. We heard loud and clear, housing is too expensive, food, health care, child care. If you're an elder trying to go into an assisted living place, everything is too expensive. The AG's office has significant tools to deal with those affordability issues. Consumer justice is a major focus of the plan in the office, and so we're going to continue to move that forward. The other pillar in the plan is supporting our young people, and not just in word, but in action. I'm an AG, but I'm a mother of 2 young boys. We have a mental health crisis, an epidemic in this country, in this state. So how do we expand access to behavioral health services? We can do that in some creative ways. How do we also hold folks accountable? We filed a lawsuit against Meta and Instagram for the role they're playing. And then one other piece I will mention, sort of another pillar, is absolutely looking at public safety and public health. We are taking guns and drugs off the street every day. Folks know that brand of the work, and our state police unit is working really hard with our Crim Bureau. But how do we look at these issues through a public health lens? Usually where incidents of crime are happening, it's poor housing stock or lack of housing. It's environmental injustice going on, toxic communities, poor schooling and poor educational outcomes. It's where the scams that we're seeing are on the rise. And so we're connecting this public health and public safety, saying they are one and the same. And so those are just 3 pillars. There are 5, but you got to read the plan. So I encourage everyone who is here and listening to follow us at Mass AGO if you're on social media. We have released a plan in several languages: Spanish, Portuguese, Haitian Creole, Chinese, Vietnamese. We want to be accessible. So I encourage folks to read it, and then frankly think about what you're going to do to engage with us to implement the plan. It's a strategic plan. It's not an implementation plan. We want it to be bottom up. We wanted to do it with residents. So follow us on social media at Mass AGO.
We're talking to the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Andrea Joy Campbell. Sarah in the car. You're on with the Attorney General.
Rick in the truck, Sarah in the car.
That's
Thank
right.
you all. I hope
That's
you
how it
all,
works here.
and I hope you're pulled over
Yeah,
Hi,
that's
Sarah.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
as you're dialing.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi,
Hi,
Sarah.
Attorney General. Thank you. Hi, thank you for taking my call. My question relates to the 2016 ballot question, the Act to Prevent Cruelty to Farm Animals. So, in the last 2 years, cage-free eggs are required to be sold in Massachusetts, and as of last year, whole muscle pork had to be within the Q3 requirements. Now, I work for a wholesale food distributor based in Massachusetts. We sell to hospitals, schools, restaurants, etc. And folks on the ground are saying that nobody is enforcing this law. So now national distributors are starting to sell meats that are not in eggs that are not in compliance. Who is in
Sarah, hey,
charge of-
Sarah, yeah, your connection's horrible, so if you don't mind asking the question, it'd be great.
Who's in charge of enforcing this law?
Thank you, Sarah.
So we are, and we actually just got a recent decision in this case. We are in active litigation on this case. And so actually, Sarah, it may not be a bad idea, since you're in the car, if you wanted to stay on, we can give you an update on where we are with that litigation, but we are. Similar to right to repair, for example, people are challenging our laws or our certifications of certain ballot initiatives, but we actually, I think, had a really good victory in this recent decision. It may be appealed, so just if you want to stay on, Sarah, we are actively proceeding. If we could implement the law immediately, we would, but people are challenging provisions of it. But it was a good decision, I think, recently, and so it's ongoing. But if you want to stay on, we can absolutely share some more, and then maybe actually would be helpful is you can share that with some folks in your network.
Sarah,
Yeah.
don't go away. We're going to put you on hold. Please give your contact information to our colleague.
Speaking of right to repair, I know that Senator Elizabeth Warren and some other people have been very concerned about why it's taking so long. I think the ballot question was in 2020 on right to repair. It was an overwhelming win. What is holding that up?
Nothing at this stage. It is the law of Massachusetts. It obviously took a little bit of time because we had the federal agency, the National Highway Traffic Safety
Yeah,
Administration,
Right.
put out a letter that almost got in the way of us being able to enforce it. They have since changed that position. The FTC chair was actually recently here. I just met with FTC Chair Khan, who is also following right to repair and working with us. But it is the law of the land, the law of Massachusetts. So we're encouraging folks, independent repair shops, if they are not receiving the telematics information, to reach out to our office to let us know that. I know Senator Warren and the FTC chair were recently at an auto dealer talking about this issue and the importance of implementing this. It took some time because of challenge, et cetera, but similar to some other laws, we were able to overcome those hurdles, and we're enforcing it.
But that's what the Senator Warren and the FTC head con were upset about. They went out and interviewed these people, I
Yep.
guess, and at the repair shops, and they said the law's not being enforced.
And so we're saying we can't know that, right? So obviously we stay in touch with Senator Warren, FTC chair. We can
Yeah.
figure out who, but we encourage anyone, and we said this to the senator and the team as well, where they're not getting the information as required, to reach out to our office.
Okay.
There are steps we can take to ensure compliance. And there are steps they can take too, whether it's filing suits or anything else as well. So we're going to keep pushing it. I also think, communication, how do we get this information out there is really important. I think the last time it was sort of in public view, it was sort of the back and forth between our office and the federal agency. But that's since been worked out, and it is the law of Massachusetts to be enforced.
We have to take a break. Before we do, I believe you told my former colleague, the great LaToya Edwards, recently, that what you try to do is take a break in the middle of the day every day. I don't know you that well.
Yeah.
You don't seem
I
like a
like
break
that
in the middle of the
idea.
day kind
I'm
of
with you.
person. So she's laughing nervously if you're not watching.
LaToya.
So what exactly, what do you do in the middle of the day for whatever purpose, reduce your stress, what do you do exactly?
I go for walks.
You do not.
And I
do you
do,
really?
and I actually prefer to do it where I'm not in a suit. So I change my clothes, I have my sneakers, I put my clothes on, I go for a walk, and then I come back. And I encourage my team to do the same. It is
Impressed.
busy, but fresh air, especially on a day like this, critical for your brain, your mental health. And the work will be there when you get back, but it's really important. And I have actually prioritized my health since taking on this job. I want energy not just for my job, but I want energy for my husband. So when we go on date night, I'm not exhausted.
Oh,
I want
I
energy
like
for
that.
my 2 kids. So when Aiden and Alexander want to play, that I can play with them and not be exhausted.
So if your
take
constituents
care of
want to ask
ourselves.
you questions while you're on your walk, what route do you take exactly? We're talking to Andrea
I
Joy
do see
Campbell.
some people who, but most just sort of wave and let me keep walking.
Let's hope
That's
so.
very kind.
But I would suggest that they let me just walk.
Okay.
And then call the office.
Fair
And maybe if we walk, we talk about something not related to work.
Got it.
That's also
I
important.
think that's a great idea, Jim. What do you think?
Well, we have a show
important.
11 to 2, Marjorie. It's a little tough.
Okay.
So you
know
have
what
to
I
go
mean?
before.
Why don't you
you
just
have
take
to-
a walk and see?
Before or after?
Okay.
Okay. We're talking with Attorney General Andrea Joy Campbell. She's going to be with us till the top of the hour. You can reach her at 877-301-8970. We'll try to get to as many calls and texts as we can. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
From GBH News, I'm Soraya Wintersmith. This is What Is Owed. The Petitions of Belinda Sutton is one of America's earliest cases of reparations.
Belinda goes, compensate me for the labor that was stolen from me.
Even as Belinda was boldly asking for a piece of the profit she helped to create, she was also condemning the system of slavery.
Black people have always been their own political agents.
Follow What Is Owed and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Edison Gallery of American Art, presenting 2 photography exhibits on the American experience, A Long Arc, Photography in the American South, and Robert Frank and Todd Webb Across America in 1955, addisongallery.org. And Eversource, committed to helping Boston communities meet clean energy and electrification goals with enhancements to power grids. More information, including virtual information session dates available at eversource.com/yourvoice. And Vermont Law and Graduate School, offering JD and master's degree programs in environmental law and policy and restorative justice, online and residential programs available. vermontlaw.edu. And the Umbrella Arts Center, presenting The Minutes, a city council meeting in small-town USA unravels in real time in this dark comedy mystery, March 1st through March 24th. Tickets at theumbrellaarts.org.
Dengue fever is spreading fast in Brazil with 1 million cases recorded this year already.
And is in a track to break all records of transmissions.
Public health experts are concerned this potentially fatal mosquito-borne disease could signal a surge of cases in other countries. That story next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com and facebook.com/GBH News. Starting next Wednesday, 3 days a week here at the library, and in exactly 25 minutes, the governor will join us for an hour of Ask the Governor. But now, for the rest of this hour, we continue to be joined by the Attorney General, Andrea Joy Campbell. To reach her, lines are full, but you can text at 877-301-8970 or approach Hannah, our colleague, somewhere over there, if you want to ask a question from the audience.
Ann in Boston, thank you for calling. You're on with the Attorney General.
Hi, Ann. Ann.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. There's been a lot of news coverage regarding the Norfolk VA, Michael Morrissey's questionable bias investigations, and I'm just wondering, why does your office still stand behind their decision in the murder of Justin Root by Boston police, given all that has come to light recently regarding their patented practices?
Thank you, Ann. Talking about Justin Root and that situation. Ann, thanks for the call.
So we are obviously in touch with Justin Root's family, his sister, his dad. We did a full evaluation of this and shared with his sister our result. If anything, it was actually reviewed by my predecessor, and I know DA Rollins, I think, at the time, and others, and decided that there's nothing that sort of we can do here. I will just stress, though, I am mindful, and it is wrong for someone to die at the hands of a governmental agency and actor. And we made it crystal clear to the family that we don't have what it would take to be successful here. And so what we did do is stress that I inherited decisions that were made previous in this matter. So there's not much I can do to change that. But we established a police accountability unit because we understand how significant these cases are, and there is a role for our office to play. We actually didn't have, I think, the human capital and resources we needed to do it very seriously because we just got the unit off the ground. So going forward, we're telling folks and there are others who have lost their loved ones in a police-involved incident, where we're saying we're going to need to learn from you what the process was for you, how you did not get the accountability and justice you care about, and to make sure that that doesn't happen as we take on new cases of this vein. And then personally, I will just stress.
Could you explain who he was for people that don't know?
So he was a son, a brother of someone who was killed. And it involved two different counties, two different police agencies. It was reviewed by district attorneys, the AG's office previously. But someone who is obviously involved in a police-involved shooting.
Okay.
And there were others, of course, and you have a family seeking some justice and accountability. Difficult when decisions were made previous, and you go to a court sometimes and them overturning a previous decision, good luck. Extremely difficult and challenging to do. So going forward, we're going to take on these cases seriously, hence why we established the Police Accountability Unit. But one piece I wanted to just mention, because I think sometimes people forget, my twin brother Andre died 12 years ago, and not to suggest it's the same circumstances as Justin's case or others, but where I have significant compassion for these types of cases is Andre died while in the custody of the Department of Correction, pretrial detainee, lack of health care, 29 years old. There was no justice or accountability whatsoever for my family. My family still doesn't even know fully the circumstances under which he died. We sought information and got information that was painful to read, and was never able to hold anyone accountable because just how difficult it is to do it. In this case, the legal standard is challenging, the amount of resources you need, it drags on and on. So I stress that because I get my role and responsibility in ensuring folks have access to justice and accountability, particularly in these types of cases when a governmental agency is active and involved. And then I will just use it as an opportunity to say one more point. In our strategic plan, I talked about 3 other themes. Government accountability is one other theme. We have 5. This is a 4th one that is really important. We're going to prioritize public corruption, misappropriation of funds, wrongful convictions. All of these things are top of mind and going to be a part of the work. So I appreciate Ann calling in, and we remain in touch, of course, with his family.
I'm going to try to connect a couple of topics you've mentioned. Young people, and we talked about for-profit entities in the case of Stewart. You oversee public charities in your role as Attorney General. White Stadium, we've talked to the mayor quite a bit about this, is about to make a deal with a for-profit entity, a private entity, to allow them to use that stadium for a huge percentage of time, during which time members of the public would not be able to. On the flip side, they're contributing a lot of money, I think 30 million, I think from them, 50 million from the city. I may have it backwards. But some people consider this to be sort of like a hijacking of public space by the private sector.
It's kids' football teams.
Right.
Boston
High school teams, yeah.
Kids' football teams.
So what do you think about this, and do you have a role in overseeing this transaction?
Well, right now we don't have a role. The city of Boston, it's a parcel, if I remember correctly, it's owned by the city of Boston, and the mayor obviously has had conversations to pursue her plans with respect to this development. And I think in media accounts that I've read, we'll continue to use pieces of it for youth sports and youth programming, particularly for Boston Public School students. But the other piece is obviously there's now a lawsuit against them. I think my former colleague is involved. A.G. Hochbarger is on that side. So it was presented to us. We are in due diligence mode, learning as much. We frankly learned more of it via the media reports versus other conversations. But as of right now, we don't have a role to play, but we're getting more information.
You know, one thing you do have a role to play in, because you wrote a piece with Michelle Wu about this, banning these third-party electric suppliers. These people call constantly, and they're very aggressive, but it turns out you're not getting a great deal. So tell us about your objections to them.
Competitive electric supply is a significant issue. Talk about economics and affordability. I'm proud of the partnership with Mayor Wu, along with Rep. Moran and Senator Crichton, who are also spearheading this work. My office has received, I would say, thousands of calls from constituents over the years who have been sold a product, competitive electric supply, for their individual home. And after they sign the contract, maybe in month one, they'll realize a savings, but then post that, they're realizing losses. And in some places where you live in a community and you have actually municipal aggregation, your bills are higher than if you were in the municipal program. And so we have done a deep dive on this issue and realized that our constituent work to try to get folks their money back, we'll continue that. We've actually sued some of these providers because of the losses and the unfair market practices of door-to-door selling, aggressive selling, and certain things that they're doing to get people to sign these contracts, to hold them accountable. And when we get some level of accountability and we win, they file bankruptcy, so we actually can't get the resources to provide restitution. So we have taken a very dramatic step, which we recognize as dramatic, which is to use our policy and government tool to show up at the State House with legislation filed by me, but also with Rep. Moran and Senator Crichton, to push the State House, both the House and the Senate, to pass legislation banning the competitive supply market for individual residential households. They can continue their commercial work, they're doing just fine, but on the individual side, they have afforded no one any wins. It is significant losses, and I'm talking about losses that over $500 million. It is not working, and we cannot keep up with the complaints, and so we're telling the legislature, you have to do your part, and these people have to go. There's a back and forth right now on possibly introducing more laws to regulate this industry, and I am saying that is a total waste of time. They don't need more laws. They are not in compliance with the laws we currently have. They need to be banned fully from this market, and they target communities of color and poor communities. They know exactly what they're doing. They're showing up in places where they can not only target folks, but also get them to sign these contracts, take full advantage of folks in certain communities, and not afford them any wins, but instead bring about significant losses and disparities in what folks pay for their utilities versus others.
You and Mayor Wu wrote at the end of your piece that Governor Baker supported the ban, that Governor Healy supports the ban, which I assume means it'll never go anywhere in the legislature. I mean, do you have any sense about what? I mean, this seems to be such a slam dunk. And
it is a slam dunk.
So why
It's
are
an
they not
economic
moving this
justice issue.
expeditiously?
I think they are. We are staying in contact with the chairman on the House side as well as on the Senate side, and trying to push this through and saying, yes, we understand we're taking a piece of their market away, and we don't do that lightly, but they have demonstrated year after year that they're not going to bring about losses. Let's continue to push municipal aggregation, for example. And the other piece I want to stress is, if we don't do this and get this right, we will be back here in a year or two probably talking about $1 billion in losses, and for poor people and people of color. And I've yet to get a response on, if you pass more laws, for example, to regulate this industry, what are you going to do to help those communities and residents of color and those poor communities right now who are being targeted? And so for me, it's crystal clear. It is, of course, for the mayor, who sees it in Boston. It's also clear for Rep. Moran, who's obviously Lawrence and other communities, Senator Crichton, the same thing. And it is painful to get these calls when you know that you can't deliver the justice they deserve for the consumer protection we say we care about so deeply.
Judy and JP, Jamaica Plain, you're on with the Attorney General, Andrea Joy Campbell. Hey.
Judy. Hi, Judy.
Hi. First time, long time. Love you guys.
Thanks.
Good to be talking to you, Attorney General. I'm calling because I'm wondering if it's possible, or if it already exists, a law that if corporations do business with customers, that there has to be an availability of a human to speak with. I'm saying this
Go for it, Judy.
My mortgage was sold because my mortgage company went belly up, and now I have an important question to ask my mortgage company, and I've called a number of times the past couple of weeks, and I get stuck in automation. And there's significant problems I need to deal with, but I can't get a human.
So, one, I think you should stay on the line to help us navigate contacting the mortgage company in that specific case for you and with you. We would love to be as helpful as we can. I don't know that we're going to go out and pass a law to get humans, but I will say we are actively looking at AI and machine learning. Actually brought back a lawyer who used to work in the office, Stephanie Lavelle, wooed her back. She was actually the first black woman to serve as first assistant, which was a major deal in the AG's office. And she is taking the lead on helping us develop a framework for AI and machine learning. There are benefits to it, but there are also risks. AI, for example, can be helpful with big, huge discovery in cases, and but it's also at risk for discrimination, of course, bias, and then the very thing you just described. So we're looking at what those risks are, and I think we'll find ways to develop it. I don't know that we will pass a law here, but we will help you hopefully navigate the mortgage issue and continue to have more information on the AI machine learning piece. And I will just tell folks, if you are not paying attention to anything related to AI and machine learning, you should. It shows up in our life, frankly, every day, as just described. If it is a robot that is speaking to you, that is technology, so you are interacting every day. But there are some significant risks as you introduce new technology, and our office is really looking at what those risks are to address them.
Judy,
so thank you, Judy.
Don't go away. We're going to take your contact information and give it to the Attorney General's office, so stick around if you would.
I was just looking, lots of people are concerned if they can't find anybody to talk to anywhere. No.
And I just, I still have to call people too. I still have a family and things to address, and you were on hold for 45 minutes, and it's like, are you kidding me? But at least there are companies now, they can say, will you leave your number and someone will call you back, so you're not sitting on hold. So, we can encourage companies.
Why couldn't you pass a law that says within X number of minutes, if you want to do business in the Commonwealth, a human has to be available?
Especially for older people. A lot of people are older. They're calling it that.
That's right. I mean, you could pass a law for a lot of things, but this is why we have our strategic plan, Jim, that you're going to read later on.
I read it last night. I did.
So that we can focus our energy and limited resources, right, on passing things that will make a big difference. And I will say, we're working with the corporate community, private sector all the time on just ways they can improve customer service generally. This could be one.
Lucy in Worcester, you're on Boston Public Radio with the Attorney General. Welcome.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for taking my call, Attorney
Sure.
General.
Oops, sorry. Yep.
I need some assistance navigating when a patient feels they've been treated to unethical business, dental practices.
I'm sorry, Lucy, say that again.
Dental.
You broke up, at least in my earpiece here, or headphones.
Oh.
Say it again, Lucy, please.
I've been to an unethical dentist.
Unethical dentist.
And you want to know what to do about it?
Yes.
You need to call us.
Correct.
I will.
I did. I filed.
Okay.
I filed last Thursday, but
Okay. So
I've noticed this is a widespread issue, especially here in Worcester County. I posted on the Nextdoor group. I now have a list of 5 dental companies that have been trying to pull these same shady tactics that they did with me. So is there any advice that I can give these other people that are going through the same thing that I am, other than just submitting?
Can you stay on, Lucy? Can you stay on so we can obviously discuss what you submitted with Lauren from my incredible team? So stay on. We can discuss specifics with you. But why I appreciate the call is just this morning with my Medicaid fraud unit that is not only focused on elder care and long-term care facilities, but if you receive mass health dollars or public dollars, holding folks accountable. And they're doing significant work when it comes to some dentists who are not, or who are either billing inappropriately to our state health system, seeking resources inappropriately. So they take on fraud, of course, in these systems as well. So I mention it because it is a major issue, possibly in certain parts of the state, but this unit is on top of it. So do stay on with us, Lucy.
Lucy, we're going to put you on hold. Same deal. We'll take your contact info and give it to the Attorney General's office.
Attorney General John from Nantucket wants to know if the Attorney General has her kids call her General.
Hello, John. Absolutely not. Even if I see neighbors at the grocery store, and if someone calls me General, please don't do that. It's really strange.
Oh, yeah.
But obviously, in the role and the title, I understand that. I think more folks say AG than General. It's usually the elder generation that says General.
Yeah.
We only have a minute or so left, and you mentioned last night
John.
that you were with the Attorney General, with the governor helping Joe Biden get reelected. There's a poll out this morning that shows out of Harvard, by the way, 11 points underwater is Joe Biden, a net positive for a guy who's been found liable for rape, for $500 million of fraud, has 91 felony counts. I don't want your comment respectfully on Trump. What do you make of the fact that an overwhelming percentage of the American public is not only satisfied, but enthusiastic about a man with that description being the next president of the United States?
I stay in touch with, obviously, with AGs across the country, and we have been having conversations about we have to do everything in our power to reelect Biden and Harris. It's just not an option. The rule of law is at stake. Reproductive justice is at stake. If you care about affordability and these issues and job creation, that's at stake. They are delivering millions of dollars, and the governor, I'm sure, will speak to this, not only for infrastructure projects, but they're creating jobs, they're lowering prescription costs for seniors, capping insulin costs. The other piece that is really important, if you care about basic love and decency and an administration that's going to push back against hate and white supremacy, the list could go on and on. I could be here for another hour talking about, well, Biden and Harris, that's an easy question. And white supremacy is on the rise even here in Massachusetts. We filed a lawsuit against a neo-Nazi group, NSC 131, that is operating right here in Massachusetts, founded in Massachusetts. And the New Hampshire Attorney General, who's Republican, filed a lawsuit for their behavior there to say hate is unacceptable. So it is active here, and so if you want us to have partners, and let me tell you, all the things I just described in this interview, I can't do it if you don't have Biden and Harris reelected. So everyone has to do their part. No one is perfect, but they're doing the best thing they can, and the other option is just not okay.
Thank you,
Attorney General, thank you very, very much for coming in today.
We'd like to continue, but we know she has to take a walk.
That's
so
right.
Obviously we have to let her go.
Be sure to vote next week in the presidential primary,
it.
which is really important too.
March 5th.